Straw, your primrose, just the coolest stuff. And this is not a chalk downland, this is purely on a bit of old rubbish, cheap rubbish in fact, just down the road. Tip 6.
So now I've changed actually into a black t-shirt because I was getting a bit worried that John's looking a little bit like the man from Black Magic, so I thought we'd do a double act.
Another material just to show you what you can try. I mean, this is a pebbles shingle. Well, I was one of those strange kids that was interested in wild plants at much too young an age. Probably 14, I was growing stuff that was a bit strange. And I kept that with me, I suppose, all through my career in retail for 20 years. So I had that going on in the background. And then after 20 years of selling shoes, I fell into doing really what I'd been doing in my spare time. So we built a house, me, my dad and my brother, between us, a wooden house, easy, nice and easy to build. And that really has allowed me now, and when we built the house we just thought, well, this is weird, why don't more people have green roofs? And then when I fell out of the retail and we decided to change, I just thought, you know, why aren't people doing it, so why don't we do it as a career? There's got to be a career in it somewhere. And of course, we couldn't call the company anything else but Grass Roof Company, so that's what we ended up doing.
Well, I was really an actor circus performer, and I was training young people way back when to learn circus, and somebody found out I was a bird watcher, and I got involved in an ecological survey of South East London, and we found this rare bird called the black redstart. And we suddenly had this mad idea, well, if they're going to build all these new buildings, why don't we put whatever the black redstart likes on top of the roof? You know, this is sort of like kind of green roofing, ecological compensation. I didn't really know very much about it back in 1997. And of course now, you know, I'm president of my federation, I get invited all over the world to speak. But I'm completely untrained. I have no formal building qualifications, any horticultural qualifications. I don't even have an ecological qualification, but I spent the last 17, 18 years just working in green roofs and trying to find out how I could make green roofs that are good for wildlife in the United Kingdom, and perhaps wildlife in other countries all around the world, because I kind of take those ideas and try to put those in those climactic situations.
I suppose when I started I didn't really expect to be doing all grass roofs or loads of grass roofs, because I had to badger people and enthuse about it so much to actually get people to have them, because people didn't want them in those days. But we got there, and eventually, and I suppose now we must have built way over 70 timber grass roofs, or timber green roofs. Timber buildings with green roofs on. So and now people ask me to do it. I had to badger them before, now they ask me to do it, so that's cool.
So, John, like me, you're completely self-trained, aren't you?
Yeah, we didn't learn anything when we started green roofs. What we've learned, of course, has come from trying lots and lots of different stuff, and more importantly, going back to roofs to have a look, find out what's happening 5, 6, 7 years down the line, because the success of anything in landscape on a green roof is to see what it looks like after that amount of time. You can't just go up there and take a snap the first year and say, well, look at me, okay, clever I am, I've made a pretty green roof. Look at it in the 5 years, look at it in 10 years, then you can judge success. And that kind of working out how to make that happen can only, I think, come on the back of experience and of building roofs, looking at roofs, going back to roofs. is most clients are pretty keen to start. After a little while, you know, it's up there, it's doing stuff, but they're not that bothered. But we've always had a good relationship with them, so that we always just turn up back on their doorstep and they let us go up on their roof, and we keep them informed on what's happening. And that's a really nice thing to be able to do. And unless you do that, unless you go back, you can't look in the future.
From about 2005, I was getting nearly 10, 15 emails a week from people who just wanted to go and build their own green roof. Many people felt very bamboozled by a lot of the commercial websites. So I met up with John, and he was getting a lot of emails. So what we decided to do is try and write a guide which got down to the detail of the screw you use actually on the construction, to actually give people the confidence to actually build one themselves.
And again, because it's unusual that we're both, we're not ambitious enough to be secretive about our ideas. You know, we share everything I've learned, everything Dusty's learned, we share. And I think that's quite unusual in a commercial environment.
It's incredibly rewarding on a human scale, because, you know, having been involved in the green roof industry, it's often wrapped up with, you know, what's the market and what's the industry, and it all gets sort of very focused on the construction industry model. But actually, you know, most of the people I've met in the green roof industry are actually people who actually want to do something that's positive. And, you know, when you get these 25, 30 people, and you've got 25, 30 people who tomorrow want to walk out and actually do something positive, you know, you just think that's just kind of why we do what we do.
You want to be about, you know, 2 or 3 mil out. It's not a pretty cool game, but it just makes for a better job.
You just want to make sure that everybody knows that I do actually work sometimes, yeah? I do actually do some work, yeah? It's not just John and Dave, it's actually me too. Yeah? All the videos of the workshops have never shown me. We're at the London Wildlife Trust build team.
So now, once we got the guide going, we thought, well, it would make sense for us to run a few workshops. And we're lucky, we've got a good space where I live. So Dusty comes down to us, we run the workshops in a couple of shipping containers, and we have the gardens and several green roofs to wander around to, and we have what I suppose you'd describe as a very relaxed workshop. In fact, so relaxed, one year after going down the pub, 3 people slept over and stayed, and we often find that's the case. So, and we hope that comes over in the guide as well. That you can, you know, be a bit more relaxed about it. You're never going to go far wrong, as long as the roof don't fall down
or leak.
If you could just juggle with them or spin them on a finger or something.
So, this is what we don't do very often. We don't often sit up and not work and sit on a green roof and just chill out for a bit, but this is kind of nice. So making this video has been kind of good. And what's so lovely about this roof is the fact that we've done absolutely nothing. So we've never cut it, we've never watered it, we've never really cared about it really. And every year, of course, it changes. And every year there's something slightly different appears. Some years, if we get the drought a bit later, which gives the oxeye daisies a chance to flower, then we get loads of oxeye daisies the next year. This year, the drought came early to knock the daisies over, and this year we've got some musk mallow hanging around on the roof. So each year there's a different thing, and each year there's something worth coming up to have a look at. So this is a really what you'd call a bad roof, maybe. It's a really rich. We dumped loads of compost on here. Completely not what we'd talk about doing now, but I kind of quite like it. And if you know what to expect, if you want a roof that's like this, thick grass, twitch, rank grass, which are good, there's plenty of mammals up there, I should imagine, plenty of anthills, then that's fine. But you just need to know whatever you do with the soil is going to dictate what your plant community is going to do.
Initially, of course, when we built the house, that was kind of one of the first roofs we'd done, and we naively, although it wasn't naive now, but I naively dumped a lot of the claggy, horrible clay soil straight on the roof. and then we chuck some seeds on it. Now, when we started doing it commercially, we were given advice by the big suppliers initially, because we didn't have a clue what we were doing initially, to do it this way. In other words, to do seed and blanket rock wall. Turns out, of course, that if you do that, you're limiting, the excitement of a green roof. You're limiting the biodiversity of a green roof. So we started to play around with substrates. We started to use waste materials. We started to use crushed brick. We started to use crushed ceramics. In fact, we started to use really materials that were around the site. We weren't particularly obsessed about getting a particular commercial substrate. And of course, each roof then became different. Each roof was different, and each roof we learnt from. So we worked out that too much crushed concrete meant it was too dry, too much crushed brick meant it was too soggy. And then we've gone on from there, and gradually we've been able to develop what we think is probably the right roof.
If you dump topsoil on a roof, thinking it's going to be this beautiful flower-rich thing,
Rank vegetation, you're not going to get the diversity of flower species.
Yeah, I think crucially, I mean, there's several things that dictate what plants you end up with, but crucially it's the kind of soil you put on the roof. So that really kind of dictates what plant community you're going to have. So you don't really want a high nutrient level. If you put a high nutrient level roof on, which I suppose would be like a gardener would do or a horticulturist would do, you end up really with a narrow band of species, because you're not going to be gardening the roof in the same way as you would do if it was on the ground. So you've got to limit your nutrients and keep that balance, and then you'll find the diversity of plant community will gradually come through without too much maintenance and without that kind of gardening mentality about it.
yeah, so often you'll find on a pitched roof, you'll find like the sedums gravitate to the top and the edges because it's a bit drier, and then the wildflowers will vary down the slope. And even on a flat roof, you'll find if you do put a lot of sedums in and wildflower seeds, that the sedums again will push to the edges or to the bottom of your ridges where you've got the dry riverbed, because it's going to be drier there. Down on this roof, and you can smell the marjoram, you can smell the basil. It's really, really like a Greek mountainside in Essex.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I think if I started looking on the web and started looking at the commercial companies and the advice that comes through from them, it would feel a daunting thing to do. But I think what you need to do, a bit of advice I would take is think about your roof in two ways. One is you want to waterproof it. Okay, you've got to do that on a roof anyway. Waterproof it. Get the waterproofing done. Be careful you don't damage the waterproofing. Then you can look at the green roof. And the green roof is the lovely bit. It's the easy bit. It's the you can't go far wrong bit. You've got to deal with basically getting some soil up there, getting the water off that falls on your roof in a quick enough way, a reasonable way. And you can do that in many, many ways. You don't have to do a standard drainage mat. You can do all sorts of other methods. But essentially, all you're doing is taking the water that falls on your roof and you're getting it off at a speed, at a pace that might suit your roof. So we thought, when we first started, how are we going to get the water off the roof? How are we going to get it off in a reasonable enough speed? And it just made sense to us to create gullies, like little dry riverbeds, within the substrate, on the lower section of the substrate, that kind of meandered back to where the outlet is, meandered back to where the hole is, where the water gets off the roof. So that's what we did. And of course, what that does, it takes the water away in a fairly efficient way, and it also creates a much more diverse depth of soil on your roof. So you've got some very shallow spaces and you've got some quite deep spaces.
Chinese layers on pitched roofs seem even less essential. The water's always going to find its way down.
So here we are by one of your rain trains, John. So like, I mean, in your experience, if you get like a really, really big downpour, how long before you actually witness the rain coming down the chain?
Well, if you get a heavy storm, especially a summer storm when the substrate's probably dry-ish, it takes a lot of rain before anything comes out of the chains. It absorbs into the soil, obviously, for a long, long while before it drips out. And then when it starts dripping out, of course, it drips out it could drip out for a day, virtually. Right. So it's released really slowly.
It was about 4 years ago you came up with this new edge detail, didn't you, with wire mesh to make a kind of more rustic feeling to the edge of your roof.
So this is the bit I'm always slightly, anal's the right word, yeah, I'm slightly obsessed about, because if you're down there where you are, Dusty, you can't see what's going on up here generally. This is the bit you see on a green roof. So if you get this bit right, you're going to look cool.
And also what happens is the sedums climb into the stones, don't they? So actually you can get a bit of a vegetated edge, can't you?
Yeah, you get like a mini dry stone wall thing going on. Yeah. Another material just to show you what you could try. I mean, this is some pebbles, but you could use shingle, you could use brick, you could use crushed concrete, reclaimed stone. So if you use this system, it gives you a chance to use a material that might be local to the site, and just to add a bit of interest instead of a bit of old aluminium.
One of the inherent problems with something like green roofs, because it's part of the construction industry about the built environment, is it tends to get overlaid with the fear factor of how things can fail. And you know, one of the beauties of working with John on the small scale stuff is that actually, you know, when you sit there and you look at it, a green roof is a relatively simple thing. But you know, when you have to take the green roof into the high-end commercial industry, you know, we've got lots of liabilities and lots of fear factors. But for people who want to do something at a relatively small scale, if you follow some basic principles and you have a sensibility about what you're trying to achieve, and you know, to me, and I think John agrees with this, is that you know, your sensibility should be local, regional, and then national. It is actually quite simple and quite cost effective to build a 20 metre squared roof or a 40 foot square roof. At the end of the day, a roof mustn't collapse and it mustn't leak. And then, from my perspective, what happens on the vegetation side is something which is resilient, local, regional. And that's what you're aiming for. Now that's just my view. You can have a twitch grass roof, or you can have, you know, put the spoil up like John did on his original house, and you know, if you're happy for it to be brown grass all summertime, that's fine by me. You know, I'm relaxed. If you want exotics up there, that's fine by me. But you know, what we're trying to do is trying to make the vegetation right for you. And I have to say, and it might sound churlish, and I might sound like a slightly irreverent, you know, I go all over the world, and it's actually quite sad. I spoke to a lot of my colleagues I've known for 20 years. Is nearly most of the conversations about green roofs at high-end conferences very rarely talk about the vegetation cover. They're talking about all the technical stuff underneath. And the point of having a green roof is to have a good vegetation cover, and that's what you should be focusing on.
We've always had an interest in wildflowers and nature, and we're just trying to put wildflowers and nature onto green roofs. And this is John's garden, and it's where I come for a bit of envy. So a lot of these are plants we like to put on green roofs. We've got Viper's bugloss, even in primrose down there we put on a green roof. And of course all our native herbs, they tend to grow a little bit smaller on roofs. Now this is Self Hill. You can see it's in fabulous bloom this year actually, because he's been changing his mowing regimes along this bit. And you can see there's actually plenty of bees and plenty of butterflies. There's a really good plant on a green roof. It just grows a little bit, it's a bit more stunted. I mean, it's quite a stunted flower at ground level, but it's just that little bit more stunted and a little bit more sensitive to the stress on a green roof.
So I'm in my favourite place. I'm standing on crushed concrete, crushed brick, and look what's growing on all that stuff. Wild basil, lady's bedstraw, even primrose, just the coolest stuff. And this is all, it's not a chalk downland, this is purely on a bit of old rubbish, cheap rubbish in fact, from just down the road. Tips it straight in the back of the truck, tips it straight on here. There's about 6 inches of this stuff, and the diversity of plant community you can grow in our waste is amazing, and it's so underused.
So here we are at London Bridge on a green roof we came and did some alterations on, and it's turning out to be one of my favourite green roofs. It's got banks
of hare's foot clover, which is one of my all-time favourite green roof plants. The Viper's blue gloss is blooming and the bees are buzzing. So we have some dianthus, more hare's foot clover and Viper's blue gloss. Honeybees foraging on hare's foot clover.
So we were bumbling along doing bespoke buildings, building timber buildings, putting green roofs on, sort of working in social housing, which was great. But I ended up spending so much time on site doing these bespoke buildings that we thought, how can we still do what we're known for, which was habitat creation, green roofs, habitat walls, but try and focus it and try and do it at home. And I think I was in a pub with Dusty again after a workshop, and we were talking this through, and we stumbled upon the idea of shipping containers. So we thought they're strong, they're portable, and we can use those to do all the things we're known for, but we can actually do them at home. So that's what we did, and we formed a company between us called Greenroofs Shelters, and we are now doing quite a lot of stuff. We do cycle shelters, we do bin shelters with green roofs, we do outdoor classrooms, community buildings, all sorts of things. And what makes it cool is, what I think is cool about it is we use shipping containers that have been 10 or 15 years at sea, so we're reusing a steel box in effect. We plant the roofs, we do all the work here so that they arrive on site completely done. And what I think makes them incredibly sustainable is the fact that we engineer the design of the roof so that they can be delivered with a green roof on them, and then they can also be moved again and again and again, so that the building itself is an incredibly sustainable thing. As soon as it doesn't suit where it's been delivered to, it can be sold on or it can be moved. And that's pretty unique for a structure, and that's what makes freight containers so fantastic to use.
So, these things are going to a lovely housing estate in Wales. So they're going from me here in Essex, sunny Essex, all the way to Wales on the back of a lorry. They're going to be planted already. There's going to be loads of bee habitat on there already. They're going to go straight from the lorry, straight into place. No site work at all. Nice and easy. It means we can be very careful and detailed about the work we do, because we're doing it all off-site in our yard, where we've got much more time to be careful about what we're doing. And it means that people can get these shelters arrive completely done. There's no disruption on site.
So we've been trying to evolve this whole shipping container thing, and when we started, we default obviously to green roof habitat panels, and then we thought, how else can we integrate wildlife into the space? How else can we make it work for the people that are using the building? So we started to put camera boxes up. So we have a camera bird box that's the signal's taken straight into the building and onto a TV screen, and then we thought, how can we use the space under the floor? So we fitted mammal boxes under the floor, which for shrews, mice, and it turns out for slugs, for beetles, and all the other things you don't realise goes on. So we fit these in the forklift hole that's in the floor, and then we feed that back into the TV. And one of the first ones we did was for a school in West London, and we fitted this mammal box. Asked the kids to put some food in there for these to bring in the rodents, and they decided to put pretty much a full Snickers bar, big chocolate bar into there, and we've got camera of this relatively slim mouse coming in through our tiny hole, access hole, and then proceeded to eat this bar that was about the size, if it were double the size of the mouse, and then we've got shots of it a huge size, and obviously it couldn't get back out the hole it came in, so it just sat there until it had got rid of enough of this chocolate bar to allow it to go back out through the space. So the Green Roof Shelters thing it's made us think about how we can use very everyday stuff bin shelters, for instance. Now, there's a very everyday thing. Somewhere to put your bins. Everyone's got to have them. Housing estates have got to have them. You've got to do them. You've got to have a structure. Well, let's make the structure do more than one thing. Let's make it house the bins, and now let's make it provide nectar and pollen by using a green roof. And also, then we thought, well, how, pollen and nectar is just a food source is one thing. We need breeding space as well. So we always fit habitat walls that are designed for invertebrates, and in particular solitary bees. Because solitary bees, as you may well know or not well know, are the most fantastic pollinators. They are incredibly efficient, far more efficient, far nicer, far more wonderful than honeybees who get all the press. But what they lack often in urban space is a breeding space. They lack simple holes. That's all they really need. So they need holes for the mix in Britain. We need holes between 2 millimetres up to 9 millimetres. So that would be up to just under ½ inch holes. And you just give them that. As long as you provide them that, they will get used pretty much. And then you've provided the breeding space and the pollen and nectar source. So when you deliver one of these buildings, you've then provided both things, which is vitally important.
So, in terms of small-scale green roofs and what John's talked about, these habitat walls, we can take that idea to the big green roofs as well, because if you're on a 14-storey building, you've got a really wonderful forage habitat for solitary bees. If you haven't got nesting habitat for them on that roof, they may not actually come, because solitary bees, some of them actually will only forage from about 600 metres from their forage site. So, taking an idea we've kind of developed for the small scale, we can take that to the big scale, and it's very, very important because beautiful meadow, no solitary bees because there's no nesting habitat. So it's an accoutrement that we should be adding to all green roofs that are designed for biodiversity, and certainly on quite a few of the roofs that I've been involved in London, we're getting these small habitat walls made by green roof shelters to add another habitat feature, and a very important one, to the green roof itself.
So the guide and the workshops are obviously, they're interaction, and they're giving us a chance to pull people and plants together, using plants for people. And that's what one of my other big passions is working within social housing space, on the ground this time, not necessarily on a roof, but using green space, using plants for people, because at the end of the day, that's crucial to making all these things work, whether it's a green roof or whether it's the space outside someone's house where they live. And the potential for using plants and green space to engage people and open a much bigger discussion is still very underplayed, and that's what really I so love about social housing green space, because basically we're there regularly and we're interacting with the people that live there, and we're using plants to make that happen.
I've been mainly known for doing work on green roofs, but over the last 5-6 years with the green infrastructure conversation, and being very fortunate to travel to places like Portland, Oregon, where some of the things we've been trying to do at roof level have been now taken down to ground level. We're trying to actually promote the use of green infrastructure at ground level, particularly rain gardens to store rainwater. So we've been advising on a number of projects and trying to design up very simple, low impact, low technology rain gardens to be put in London. And a few years ago, again, continuing this community theme, is we wrote a guide called raingardens.info to actually tell the public how they could do things, how they might be able to make a rain garden in their own garden, because often these things are held by the professions, and they're slightly removed from people. So in the same way that John has been doing as a landscape contractor, has been working on a housing estate, I am, and my other colleagues are still really interested in how we can get people to actually engage and do things themselves to actually make their immediate local neighbourhood better for themselves, but also in terms of helping that neighbourhood adapt to climate change, and also helping the whole city to adapt to climate change. And we sometimes sort of separate, you know, people and don't allow them to engage and feel that they can have some ownership of this thing. Which the ownership of rain gardens, you know, it's been well documented in North American cities like Seattle and Portland, where the public are engaged in delivering these things, and we need to take that across Europe to get the public to deliver these things too.